It's now our pleasure to introduce Caleb Saylor's Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
It is incredible to think about the Beatles, though, Gerard, how they were incredible together, but then all of them had wonderful standalone careers, too. I mean, all of them have individual songs that are just as good as a lot of the works by the Beatles. I know that might be a controversial take, but that's my take.
Legendary talent.
No doubt.
Coming from the Fab Four.
And, of course, Rhino sends us in with one of George Harrison's greats.
Absolutely. All right, Caleb, give us a rundown. What's happening here in the state of Mississippi? We got redistricting. We got gubernatorial vetoes. We got the draft, NFL draft going on. What's up? We got a lot of stuff going on in Mississippi this week, Gerard. One of the more recent things that happened, and this has been an ongoing ordeal. This dates back to a lawsuit that was filed by the NAACP in 2022 regarding redistricting. So the state Board of Election Commissioners, which is comprised by Governor Tate Reeves, Attorney General Lynn Fitch, and Secretary of State Michael Watson, were charged with redrawing 10 Senate districts and 5 House districts. And now a majority of these have already been approved of redistricting. Now there's been some litigation and been, some scuffles here and there on, whether or not certain parties agree or disagree with the lines. But we've got it pretty much boiled down to where all these lines have been drawn except for 2 Senate districts in DeSoto County, District 2 and District 11. Well, the state recently offered 2 redistricting lines, and the NAACP came back and said no. They allege that it dilutes black voting power in Mississippi, that it kind of separates the black voting age population and doesn't give them fair representation in those districts. And so the state redrew the lines and submitted that recently, submitted it Tuesday, the redrawn lines. And so now the NAACP will have 7 days to review, see if these lines in Senate District 2 and 11 are conducive to what they're wanting. And a 3-judge panel, federal judge panel, can also review this as well, and to see if the lines are accurate, if they're right, if they're good, sufficient to dispel any concerns and any allegations that the state has prejudice in its drawing process. Now, I will say the lawmakers who are in charge with drawing these lines are not confident that the NAACP is going to accept them. In fact, the state wrote in its letter to the judges that they're concerned that the NAACP is wanting to ensure that a quote-unquote black Democrat is elected to power in the state Senate in those districts. And what the state is saying is they're going to guarantee an opportunity for black voters to make their voices heard in those districts. And both of those districts will be majority-minority districts, meaning there will be more non-white voters than white voters there. But they're not going to ensure the outcome of an election. Of course, that's a very prudent thing for Secretary of State Michael Watson because he oversees our elections. So if he's saying that he's going to guarantee a certain outcome, he'd pretty much be guilty of election interference. Well, where's this headed? I mean, is this going to get into the courts and have to be sorted out there?
Well, it's already in the court system, and I think the judges. Personally, Gerard, my opinion on this is I think the judges are going to end up having to draw the lines themselves and set all the pre-election scheduling, like when the county clerk offices receive all the voter information, the new addresses, the new districts, and then when candidate qualifying period begins and all that. I believe the judges are going to end up having to sort all of that out. But there is a small chance that the NAACP may say, you know what, we're fine with these lines, though the state is not confident in that.
Okay. We'll see where that goes. Has there been any statements put out by the members of our legislature that are affected?
There was concerns earlier in the session about the lines that were initially drawn. I haven't seen any concerns espoused about the new lines that were drawn.
Okay.
And these lines were drawn on Tuesday, so I'm not sure if any of the senators in those areas or any of the legislators in those areas have voiced any concerns. From what I know, there haven't been any, but that could always change on a whimsical notice.
Yeah.
Gerard, one thing that I want to point out, and this is a different story, is that it's been over a month since 18 tornadoes pillaged 25 counties in our state. 25 counties, 18 tornadoes, killing 7 people, and no FEMA aid yet. We still haven't gotten any report back from the White House on whether our disaster declaration has been approved. And the governor issued this on April 1st. You know, it takes a while to assess damage, to see how many homes were destroyed, how many people lost their lives, the total damage from buildings, businesses, etc. And so the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency said it did its due diligence. Director Stephen McCraney was confident that MEMA officials worked alongside FEMA officials at the federal level to ensure that all damage was reported, that their T's were crossed and I's were dotted, so that their report to the president was perfect, that there was no room for error, no room for any dispute, and so that way Mississippians could get much-needed aid. Well, recently, the state of Arkansas, which had tornadoes and storms at the same time as us, was denied aid. So now there's a growing concern among those in Walthall County, which was hit the hardest in Mississippi, and other areas, that we may be without FEMA assistance. Gerard, I recently spoke with volunteer firefighter Bobby McGinnis. He works down in Walthall County in Tylertown specifically, and he talked about the devastation. We talked on the phone, and he was just beside himself that it takes so long for the federal government to intervene, to come in and help people. And he lauded the efforts. He said that volunteers have been on the ground since day one, helping people, feeding them. He said, in fact, people down there are gaining weight from all the food they've been getting and helping them. But the problem is the lack of shelter. You can give people all the food, all the clothes, all the assistance you want, but that doesn't build them a house. That doesn't build them a shelter.
I got you.
And so now what people are needing is housing, and there's a lack of that down there.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll see where that goes. I know we had MEMA Director Mike McCraney in the other day. Stephen McCraney, pardon me. Mac.
Those are Mac, yeah.
Was in the other day, and he seemed to feel like that it's imminent. It's coming. You know,
that's what MEMA officials are hoping. It's not a good sign that Arkansas was denied, but maybe there were some discrepancies with their filing and everything, and maybe Mississippi did some things that Arkansas didn't. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to believe with the governor of Arkansas's relationship, Sarah Huckabee Sanders' relationship with the Trump administration, why they would be denied. So it's kind of, I don't know, but we'll see. I mean, we don't know. I haven't heard anything from FEMA, and I know the governor's office has been kind of mum on this as well.
Yeah.
They're awaiting this, and so we'll see. But if anything happens, we'll be the first to report it at SuperTalk.fm.
Tell us about this veto that the the governor just applied to a measure that got to his desk that would have reformed our con laws a bit. Certificate of Need.
I'm going to have an in-depth story on this soon at SuperTalk.fm, but I will tell you that Certificate of Need reform has been at the forefront of the governor's agenda as governor. I mean, in fact, he wants to abolish Certificate of Need laws altogether. Well,
yeah. Nothing new.
Nothing new, right?
Yeah.
So this bill would reform it. It would double the capital expenditure for clinical operations, non-clinical operations, and medical equipment, and which is huge, right? So that means that these hospitals could spend more money on these services without having to go to the government as a liaison saying you're allowed to do this, this, and this. You have to go through this vendor, right? So it would ease the burden on hospitals, give them more autonomy. But there was an amendment added by Public Health and Welfare Committee Chairman Hob Bryan on the Senate side that would put a kind of protectionist CON on a hospital in Jackson. Now, I'm working to get specific details. You'll see that in my story soon. I can't divulge all of that right at this moment. But the governor said if we are going to have any sort of Certificate of Need laws in Mississippi, they must be applied fairly and equally and not show favoritism for hospitals, and so he vetoed it. He did say, though, the governor said if the legislature is willing to remove this one specific amendment that requires this one specific CON, then he'd sign the bill happily. So there's a chance with the upcoming special session. Now, we don't have the date for the special session, but we know it's coming because we got to get a budget passed. That CON reform very well could happen in Mississippi if both sides in the House and Senate can agree to get rid of this amendment.
Be interesting to see if that makes its way into the session, the special session.
I would be shocked if it didn't make its way. I would be shocked if the governor didn't put that on his agenda just to put these lawmakers on the record. I think a lot of what the special session is going to do, kind of piggybacking off of this conversation, is I think the governor is going to try to put a lot, specifically the Senate, because I know he's had more qualms with the Senate than the House in recent days, but put the Senate on the hot seat and see where lawmakers actually stand on a lot of his agenda.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, we got a break right here. You can come back and tell us about the draft.
Yes, sir.
And what happened there. Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News, live in the Element Wealth Studio. We are back with you in the Element Wealth Studio. We're visiting with Caleb Sailors. He's a multimedia journalist from SuperTalk Mississippi News. All right, so we talked about the governor's veto of this CON legislation, and I know a lot of folks are probably upset about the fact that Senator Hobb Bryan, he a Democrat from Amory, been there for a long time.
Yep.
And he chairs a fairly powerful committee from a legislative perspective, that being public health in the Senate. His counterpart in the House, of course, Representative Sam Creekmore. And I think it's clear that the senator does not support the repeal or the reform in any significant way of the certificate of need laws. And by the way, what we got passed here just kind of scratched the surface.
It really waters it down a little bit. But Yeah, it doesn't change it. And that's what the governor was pointing to, that he wants con laws to be removed altogether. But he even said before the session,
he's been steadfast on that for a while.
But he'd take what's given to him, like taxes. If the taxes weren't fully eliminated but cut, he'd take what's given to him. Ironically, Senator Hobb Bryan was also adamantly against the tax cuts as well, just noting the governor's agenda and where the senator stands on that. But it appears that he's not in favor of con reform. Gerard, you got me on. I have a side note to mention that has nothing to do with the legislative session, but you mentioned that we were let in with "Do It Again" by Steely Dan. I saw Steely Dan in concert last year, Gerard. They opened.
Wow.
Oh, it was cool. They opened for the Eagles, so best concert I've ever been to. But Donald Fagen did not perform "Do It Again." I was actually a little bit I wouldn't say disappointed. The concert was amazing, but how do you not perform "Do It Again"?
I don't know.
That's like their most popular
song.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, they played "Reeling in the Years" and
Deacon Blues.
No Deacon Blues.
They didn't play that.
All the other songs from that album from Asia were played. Josie and "Home at Last" and "Peg" and "Black Cow." All of those. No Deacon Blues. That's my favorite Steely Dan song of all time.
Yeah, Deacon Blues.
Oh, yeah, but
they call Alabama the Crimson Tide.
Call me Deacon Blues.
Call me Deacon Blues.
Call me Deacon Blues. It's a great song. For those who don't know that, y'all got to go back in the archives and listen to that one. It's a great song.
It is a good song.
But yeah, so on the CON though, I don't know in a I would be shocked if it's not brought up in the special session. I'd be shocked because the governor outlined a lot of things he wants discussed in a special session whenever he calls it. Is still, we don't know yet, but he talked about education reform, specifically school choice, which I know has been a huge topic in Mississippi, especially with Texas passing school choice bill recently.
I haven't gotten to that yet, but I will. Yeah, so that's a possibility. So let's talk about a little sports here, the draft.
Huge night for Ole Miss athletics last night. We had number 16 pick overall in the first round, Walter Nolan, defensive tackle for Ole Miss. And look, guys, I covered the Rebels all season. In football, I was in the press box every home game and a couple of the road games as well. And I haven't seen a defensive lineman just impact the game like Walter Nolan did for Ole Miss.
Total beast.
For Ole Miss. I have not since Robert Kimdichie. And guess what? Walter Nolan is the first-round draft pick on the defensive line for Ole Miss since Robert Kimdichie was selected by the Arizona Cardinals in 2016. Well, the Cardinals were like, okay, this first Ole Miss guy didn't work out for us, but we're going to bank on this one and Walter Nolan. So the Cardinals select Walter Nolan last night, and I mean, he draws double teams, he disrupts the interior, he has the ability to shed double teams like nobody I've ever seen. He can track down ball carriers. He can get to the quarterback. I mean, Walter Nolan does literally everything right for a defensive tackle. And now there's a couple of downsides with him. His hand size, the way he gets off the tackle. There's some things that scouts were concerned about, but all of those could be remedied with good coaching. And he's going to be paired with Calais Campbell on the defensive line. And Gerard, for those unfamiliar, Calais Campbell was with the Ravens for a long time, and he's been one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL for a very long time, and now he's with the Cardinals. Good. And that interior, good luck running the ball up the gut on the Cardinals. And then we had another draft pick, first time since 2016. We had multiple. Ole Miss had multiple first-round draft picks, and Jackson Dart, quarterback. The New York Giants had their early draft pick. Well, they traded to get into the first round again, got the Houston Texans pick, and picked up Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. everybody knows this now that's kept up with Ole Miss football. Jackson Dart has kind of been the main storyline around, other than Matt Corral early in Lane Kiffin's tenure. Jackson Dart has been one of the key focal points in Lane Kiffin's time at Ole Miss. Dart developed into one of the best passers in the country, shattered just about every record at Ole Miss that were held by, Eli Manning, Bo Wallace, Chad Kelly, even Matt Corral. And he led the Rebels to the first 11-win season in program history ever. And just been a sensational signal caller for the Rebels, and just his maturation as a quarterback from year one when he came from USC, kind of struggled in the passing game, relied on the running game, to last year where minimized interceptions, threw a lot of touchdowns, had a lot of yards per completion. It just was well-rounded as a quarterback. And now he'll be the Ole Miss's first-round quarterback selected since Eli Manning. And now I saw people posting on social media, Gerard, that the Giants did it again. They drafted another Ole Miss quarterback. But let's go back to 2004. The Giants did not draft Eli Manning. The San Diego Chargers drafted Eli Manning with the first pick of the NFL draft, which was a huge historic occasion for Ole Miss. But Eli Manning's agent, and none other than his father, Archie Manning, were like, son, you ain't playing for the Chargers. You're not. So it worked out where Eli went to the Giants. And I will say the Chargers did not get a bad end of the bargain. They ended up with Phillip Rivers, who ended up being all-pro.
Really good, yeah.
Oh, no doubt. But we saw how it worked out for Eli, though. 2-time Super Bowl MVP. I guess the owner of Tom Brady, even though Tom Brady's the most successful quarterback of all time, but his Achilles heel was always Eli Manning. And so now Jackson Dart will get to, kind of continue the Ole Miss legacy in the Big Apple. He has big shoes to fill. Eli was very successful with the Giants, but Dart, he's obviously not expected to start day one. The Giants already have 2 quarterbacks ahead of him, and Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Whether or not one of those is retained or not, we'll see. But Dart, this will give him an opportunity to kind of sit back, learn the offense, get a year under his belt where he's not forced to be the starter, forced to be a program resurrector like if the Saints had drafted him or the Steelers had drafted him, another franchise that needs a quarterback now that's kind of in limbo with other quarterbacks. This will give Dart a chance to learn the offense, kind of learn the NFL game, and then potentially, step into that starting role.
Any other Mississippi players
Nobody
been
got
drafted yet?
Not yet, but we got the second round that starts tonight at 6 o'clock, and then the third round will go tonight too. And you can look for guys like Princely Umanmielen, the edge rusher from Ole Miss, who was exceptional. Trey Harris, wide receiver from Ole Miss, could possibly go tonight. Trey Amos, defensive back from Ole Miss. I thought he should have gotten picked by the Buffalo Bills last night with that 30th selection. The Bills went with Hairston, a defensive back from Kentucky, but expect Trey Amos for sure to be an early second-round guy. A lot of NFL franchises need defensive backs, and he's one of the best in the country.
Well, that ought to be kind of neat if that comes through. So lots of talent here.
Lots of
in
talent.
the state of Mississippi.
And you can keep up. We got a draft tracker at supertalk.fm. I'm posting them, keeping the public updated with the guys that get picked. And so even guys that are from Mississippi that played at other colleges, we will get them on the website as well. So you'll see. It's a huge occasion every year, Gerard. Mississippi, I believe, is number 3 in the country in producing NFL athletes per capita. And we've got, just look at our state, Gerard. Look at the athletes we've produced. Walter Payton, Jerry Rice,
Brett Favre,
Eli Manning, Archie Manning.
Go down the list, yeah.
Right. I had to think for a second because all the names. And then current guys like Chris Jones, who's the best defensive lineman in the NFL, A.J. Brown, D.K. Metcalf. It's just Mississippi is so storied in its NFL history and now present. And now we've got a new wave, a new generation of guys that can continue to build on the state's legacy in the NFL.
Man, really incredible. So how long is this draft going to endure?
Through Sunday.
Through Sunday. How many rounds will we get through today?
2 today, and it's 7 total.
7 total, 2 today.
2 today. 3 and 4, 2 and 3 today.
But only the first round yesterday.
They only do round 1 on night 1.
On the first day. And that's because there's such production with every pick, right?
And then when you get to the later rounds, it's like, all right, now, come on, guys. Yeah. Buffalo will select this guy who's going to be on the practice squad. And but with the first round, you have all the pageantry surrounding it.
Yeah.
And of course, you had 2 former athletes that played here in the capital city. Travis Hunter was selected the number 2 pick overall for the Jaguars. Shedeur Sanders, son of Deion Sanders, hasn't been picked yet, but he'll go probably today in the second round.
Appreciate the rundown there, Caleb. Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. All right, that was good.
Thanks Gerard.
Man. Yep, we're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth Studios.